21 years ago, a 19-year-old girl in the suburbs of Grand Rapids vanished on her bike ride home after a night shift, disappearing without a trace, leaving her family and the small town gripped in fear. Police suspected a man she once knew, but with no body found and almost no leads to pursue, the investigation stalled for years. Yet through all those years, Rachel's mother never gave up hope, still believing that one day the truth would come to light. And then, from a small overlooked detail in the old evidence locker, everything suddenly changed, uncovering a secret that shocked the entire Grand Rapids community. Before we dive into this shocking story, let us know where you're watching from, and if you love cold case files like this, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next story. Rachel Porter, 19 years old, was a waitress at a small diner in the suburbs of Grand Rapids, Michigan. She lived alone in a second-floor apartment in an old complex, just a few blocks from Reed's Lake, where every morning she could hear the gentle lapping of waves and smell coffee wafting from the shop near the corner. Rachel was the quiet type. Work, home, read books. Rarely went out, except on weekend nights. That night her shift ran longer than usual. The diner had been empty for a while, just the hum of the dishwasher and the small TV in the corner. She untied her apron, said goodbye to her coworker, and wheeled her old bike out the back door. The night wind was chilly. Occasionally a car passed by, headlights sweeping over the wet sidewalk. Rachel wrapped her thin scarf, turned on her bike light, and pedaled slowly toward the lake. The ride home was less than 2 miles, but crossed a small wooded area where streetlights were sparse, many long burned out. The path around the lake was so quiet her chain rattled clearly in the air. A cat darted across, making Rachel brake sharply, then she continued. The sky was overcast, clouds hiding the moon, only faint yellow lights reflecting on the distant water. At a house near the turn, an old neighbor who stayed up late later said he saw the bike light flicker, then vanish as it turned behind the trees, leading to the lakeside wood. After that, he heard nothing but the wind and rustling branches. In Rachel's apartment, the wall clock struck nearly 11. The kitchen light was still on, her water glass on the table, spare jacket hung over the chair. Her phone was silent. A coworker from the shift texted, "Home yet?" but got no reply. After half an hour, Rachel's mother called, the ring going on unanswered. She thought her daughter had fallen asleep, but worry grew with each unanswered call, just the empty tone. By nearly midnight she decided to drive from her home in Wyoming Township to Grand Rapids. The road was empty, roadside signs flashing wearily. When she arrived, she knocked, called out, no answer. The door was locked from inside, no signs of break-in. Inside, the kitchen light still on, but the room empty and silent. The bike wasn't parked on the porch like always. On the table was the half-eaten plate of food. Rachel planned to reheat for dinner. She picked up the phone, hands shaking, called her daughter's number one last time. The ring went on. Still no answer. Unease spread, like something wrong was happening in the darkness of this small town. She stood still for a moment, looking down the empty hallway, then took a deep breath and dialed 911. On the other end, the dispatcher asked name, age, address, last contact time. She tried to keep her voice steady, saying, "My daughter, Rachel Porter, didn't come home." The call was logged at 11:58 p.m. Outside, streetlights cast down on the still lake surface, and somewhere in the Michigan night, the first police siren sounded, shattering the peaceful air of the Reed's Lakeside neighborhood. The first police siren sounded, tearing through the quiet night of the Reed's Lakeside neighborhood. Red and blue lights swept over the black water, faintly reflecting on dew-wet trees. In front of the apartment complex, Rachel's mother still stood frozen, phone in hand, not yet hung up. 2 patrol officers stepped out of the car, quickly exchanged over radio, then approached. One bent down to note, female victim, 19 years old, name Rachel Porter, left work around 10 p.m., traveling by bike, didn't return home, unreachable. They exchanged looks, unspoken but both knowing. In Grand Rapids, a young girl vanishing at night was rarely normal. The initial report went to headquarters, coded missing person, possible abduction. From Kent County Command, Detective Mark Henson got the urgent call at 12. He was home, just about to sleep, when the phone rang. On the other end, the dispatcher's voice, curt, suspicious missing person, female victim, 19, possible abduction, Reed's Lake area. Henson sat up immediately, jotted notes, grabbed his coat and notepad. 42 years old, 15 years on the force, He'd handled a few youth disappearances, but none near Reed's Lake, where locals joked it was so peaceful it's boring. Driving over the wooden bridge, Henson checked the clock. Night wind whipped the windows, white fog, like smoke, blurring both sides of the road. Blue and red lights ahead signaled he'd arrived. In front of the complex, Rachel's mother sat on the hallway bench, gripping her phone tight, eyes red from crying, lips trembling. As she saw him, "She never goes anywhere without telling me," she said, voice hoarse. Henson sat across, asked, "When did you last speak to your daughter?" "Around 7 p.m., she said. "Shift ends at 10. Usually home by 10:30. He noted quickly. Asked more details. How she got to work. Anyone usually picked her up. Exact distance from diner to home. She pointed toward the lake. "That way's faster, about 2 miles. But tonight was cold. I told her take the main road. Better lit. I don't know if she listened." Henson glanced at the wall clock, hands at 12:55. He split patrol into 3 teams. Team 1 to Lakeview Diner to verify shift end and question witnesses. Team 2 search along the main route home. Team 3 under his direct command sweep the lakeside trail. Over radio, dispatch crackled. K9 en route. Weather 40 Befive, light wind, heavy fog. Scent tracking still viable. Henson replied, "Copy." An hour later, 3 police cars parked at the trailhead. The area quiet, flanked by maples and oaks, leaves mostly fallen. Streetlights sparse, many burned out, leaving thick, dark patches. Henson flicked on his flashlight, led with an officer handling K9. The German Shepherd sniffed steadily, occasionally whining, then changing direction. It led the group, veering through low ground, near the Reed's Lake trail sign. Not far off, a young officer shouted, "Something here." Henson ran over. Under flashlight, the silver bike lay tipped on grass, front wheel caught in roots, light still weakly blinking. He knelt, examined closely, dried mud streak on seat, handlebars scratched, chain slipped off gears. Beside it, a long drag mark on the ground, about 2 meters, imprinted in decayed leaves. A team member pointed to the grass. "Small blood trail." Henson leaned in. Yes, a few dark brown dried spots, mixed in mud. He gripped the flashlight tight, said quietly, "Secure the area." In 10 minutes, forensics arrived, stringing yellow tape in a 30-meter radius. Camera clicks echoed. A tech measured, noted each mark's position. Henson circled, eyes scanning. Nearby, a broken leaning pole, shattered bulb, exposed wires. "Only one light here and it's out," he said. Tech nodded, noted. Area completely dark that night. As light hit the ground, something reflective appeared at trail edge, gray fabric fiber, thread thin but silvery. Henson tweezed it into an evidence bag. He recognized it as common in truck seats or industrial seatbelt. "Leave everything as is," he ordered. A few steps away, an officer lit a tree trunk, clear silver paint smear. "Possible vehicle impact," Henson said, signaling to scrape sample into vial. As K9 resumed sniffing, it halted abruptly, barked toward forest edge. Henson followed, saw disturbed soil, leaves swept aside, drag marks, something pulled away, he noted. Flashlight revealed more footprints, thick soles, work boot style, size 11, deep in mud. He photographed, measured stride, noted direction toward main road. By then fog thicker, wind carrying icy mist. Police light flashes reflected on distant lake. An officer reported, "Witness. At a house 300 meters from scene, a middle-aged woman in robe came out," she said. "Around 11, I heard hard braking, then a short scream, like someone startled. I opened the door but saw nothing but headlights flash." Her voice shook, as if fearing she'd heard something terrible, but too late to act. Henson thanked her, took contact info, said report any more details immediately. Back at scene, forensics collected soil, grass, footprints, each evidence bag sealed carefully, numbered. An officer gloved up, examined, small blood spot on ground. "Organic sample, enough for testing," he said. Henson nodded. He walked the path, eyeing tree lines, feeling eerie in the air. The road too quiet, no birds, no night animals, just gentle waves. When clock neared 2 a.m., they'd collected the full scene: gray fiber, silver paint chip, footprints, blood trail, soil, and grass. Henson looked around, ensuring no one left inside. He wrote in notepad, "Possible abduction confirmed. Evidence indicates struggle, likely vehicle, light-colored truck or van. Under notes he added separately. Rachel Porter, 19, last seen near Reed's Trail, probable victim of violent assault. He stood gazing at the foggy lake. Nearby, patrol team rolled up tape. Young Officer Miles approached. Boss, need search teams for morning, Henson pondered. Yes, but now prioritize scene protection. This isn't a missing person anymore. This is a crime scene. He spoke slow, firm, voice hoarse in wind. Tex loaded evidence to van, logging each in report. Another sketched scene diagram. 200-meter trail, impact point, drag marks, exit to main road. Map appeared on laptop hood. Henson watched, pointed, extend radius 10 meters, possible other tire tracks. Around 3 a.m., scene work done. As forensics, van left, headlights swept lake, making water flash, then sink back to dark. Henson walked slowly to complex. Rachel's mother still on metal bench, eyes wide, unblinking. He sat, said softly, "We found your daughter's bike, near the trail. Signs of struggle." She sobbed, whispered, "Is she alive?" He paused, then only, "We're doing everything we can." Before leaving, Henson looked back at trail, where yellow police lights still blinked in fog. In him, a strange familiar yet unfamiliar feeling rose. The night's quiet and lake wind evoked his unsolved cases. He didn't know this seemingly simple disappearance would haunt his remaining 20 years on the force. Official report to HQ at 3:06 a.m. stated clearly, scene secure, evidence collected, investigation upgraded to potential homicide. At fax bottom, Henson's scrawled signature, ink smudged by fog. In the dark beyond the lake, yellow lights quietly faded, leaving only distant truck engine rumbling past, then lost behind fog-shrouded trees. Thursday morning after Rachel's disappearance, Reed's Lake still veiled in thin fog. Flyers of the missing girl plastered gas stations, grocery stores, poles around Grand Rapids. Rachel's photo, simple smile, brown hair tied low, aired on evening news, with last seen near Reed's Trail, October 13, 2000. Still, searches yielded nothing. Henson commanded 4 straight days, expanding to Rogue River Edge, where it linked lake via narrow channel. Police, firefighters, volunteers, all exhausted, but continued. On day 5, as Henson reviewed reports, desk radio crackled, object spotted floating in Rogue River near South Wooden Bridge. He jumped up, "Send rescue and forensics now," he ordered, grabbed coat and ran to car. Sky dull gray, misty rain sprinkling when he arrived. Old Wooden Bridge spanned narrow river bend, water sluggish, flanked by reeds and thick trees. Middle-aged man stood shivering on bank, fishing rod in hand. I saw it float from north," he said, voice choked. Thought trash bag, but then saw hair, words trailed. Henson hand on his shoulder. Told officer take him to car to rest. Rescue lowered small boat. Under murky water, pale object bobbed amid reeds. As pulled near, metallic tang smell rose. One prodded with pole, and all fell silent. Female body, light blue shirt, dark jeans, arms rigid, hair matted to face. Call forensics, Henson said, voice hoarse. Area sealed in 50-meter radius. Tape strung along bank, investigators pitched rain tent. Forensics documented, body position, drift direction, surrounding obstacles. Tech waded in. Collected algae, mud, insect remains for time of death. Photographer shot every angle, detail. Henson on bridge, flashlight in hand. Trembling slightly, he watched water where team carefully placed body in nylon bag. No one spoke, just rain on tent and pen scratching. When body ashore, heavy river mud and water smell spread. Dead at least days. Skin pallid, body rigid cold. Tech whispered. Clothes match Rachel Porter description. Blue shirt, one button torn, right sleeve muddied, white sneakers. Henson knelt by stretcher, observed closely. Wrists bore bruises, and deep imprints, like bound with sticky object. He noted, restraint marks present, possible adhesive tape or nylon. Neck had long dark bruise, darker than others. Clear manual strangulation sign. Police collected more nearby, gray rope fragment in water grass, hairs on low branch. Tech shook head, no purse, no phone. Henson unsurprised. He'd seen this before. Perpetrator took all traceable items. He signaled transport body to forensics van, instruct lowest temp to halt further decay. As ambulance with body left, he stood watching. Rain heavier, drops pounding old bridge. Under river, water flowed on as if nothing happened. He knew, this moment ended all hope of finding Rachel alive. That afternoon, Kent County morgue opened. Rachel's mother arrived, led to private room. When white sheet pulled down, she glanced then collapsed. No words needed. "It's my daughter," she choked. Room deathly still, just AC hum. Henson outside, watching through glass. Though used to such moments, each still weighed heavy on his chest. Right after ID confirmation, case file updated, from missing person report to homicide investigation. Internal reports fired to HQ. Victim confirmed deceased. Signs of restraint and manual strangulation. Evidence collected at Rogue River site. Henson read each line, signed carefully. Under notes, hand-wrote, possible correlation between Reed's Trail site and river body location. Distance 3.2 miles, meaning body likely dumped upstream. Drifted long before snagging near wooden bridge. As night fell on Grand Rapids, rain stopped. In forensics van, Rachel's body lay still under white, dried mud streaks in hair. Street lights through windows cast long light streaks slowly over cold face. Henson followed convoy, notepad in hand, mind piecing, bike, drag marks, silver paint, gray fiber, estimated time of death, all linking, though still fragile. At Kent County HQ, as Henson entered, colleagues silently eyed new board photo. Rachel Porter, homicide. Beside, map of Reed's Lake to Rogue River, red pins marking, bike find, blood spot, now new, body recovery, teammate whispered. So it's clear, no hope left. Henson didn't reply. He stood before board, eyeing scene photos clipped along map edge. In dim night shift office light, black and white shots looked cold, alien, like from another world. Outside window, wind rustled curtains lightly. Wall clock struck 10. Henson closed notepad, leaned on desk, eyes on outer dark. He knew from this second, Rachel Porter's case was no longer a missing report, it was murder. And the one who did it still out there, maybe still driving that light truck on lakeside roads, as if nothing happened. As night shift dimmed lights, only pale glow on map, Henson stood still. In his mind echoed dripping water, rustling leaves, bike tires crunching wet pavement, imagined sounds clear enough to chill him. On desk, fresh printed reporting still warm, last line bold, case upgraded to homicide, primary investigator Detective Mark Henson. He stared long, then filed it. Outside, Grand Rapids night thickened, and from Rogue River mist rose like reminder the case had truly begun. The next morning, the sky over Grand Rapids was blanketed in thick clouds. In the Kent County morgue, white lights reflected off the cold steel surfaces, the space silent except for footsteps and the rustle of file papers. On the operating table in the center of the room, Rachel Porter's body lay covered with a white sheet, surrounded by recording cameras, instrument trays, and forensic staff in protective gear. Detective Mark Henson stood behind the glass partition, hands in his coat pockets, eyes fixed through the frosted pane. He'd witnessed many autopsies in his career, but with Rachel everything felt different, not just a case, but a personal burden. Karen Whitfield, the county's chief medical examiner, entered the room, her voice steady. Autopsy examination of female victim, identified as Rachel Porter, 19 years old. Case number 001-372. She donned gloves, double-checked her notes before beginning. Time of examination, the recorder clicked on, capturing every rustle of paper, every detail of the proceeding. When the sheet was pulled back, Rachel's body appeared under the stark white surgical lights. The river water had paled her skin, but the wounds were still visible. Whitfield noted, moderate preservation, slight bloating from submersion. No significant decomposition. Estimated time of death, 4 to 6 days prior to discovery. Henson quietly jotted in his notebook. Time of death, estimated, Oct. The doctor measured the wrists. Circular ligature marks, approximately 2 millimeters deep, consistent with duct tape or nylon zip ties. She directed the technician to photograph close-ups, then carefully excised skin samples from the wrists for tissue analysis. On the left elbow was a large bruise, about 5 centimeters long, dark purple, indicating the victim had struggled before death. During the neck examination, Whitworth paused longer. A bruise ran across the throat, slightly offset to the right, clearly hand-shaped. Neck, compressed with force, causing thyroid cartilage fracture and airway obstruction. Cause of death, Asphyxia, mechanical suffocation by strangulation, she said calmly. But Henson noticed her lips pressed together briefly. He'd heard that conclusion dozens of times, but it still chilled him each time. The body was gently rolled to check the back and shoulders. Small abrasions on the right shoulder, possibly from being dragged across the ground. The clothing, a blue cotton blouse, dark jeans, was carefully removed for trace evidence. A technician held up a fabric swatch with a faint brown stain. Whitfield nodded. Collect DNA sample from this area. She also directed samples from the collar, cuffs, and under the victim's fingernails. While the technicians collected, Whitfield proceeded with the internal exam. No major organ trauma beyond the neck. No poisons or sedatives in the stomach, just undigested food, likely dinner before Rachel's shift ended. No evidence of post-mortem assault, she said, eyes fixed on the specimen. Moments later, a technician returned, holding a tiny thread-like object on forceps. Doctor. Foreign fiber stuck inside the collar. Whitfield examined it under a magnifying glass, then held it to the light. The thin silvery gray fiber glinted faintly. She recorded, fiber sample, synthetic polyester, consistent with industrial seat fabric. This type was common in 1990s truck interiors or factory chairs. She glanced at Henson through the glass. Perpetrator may have used a truck. Check locals with that type of vehicle. Henson nodded slightly, scribbling, check registered owners of light trucks, model pre-1995. During the hand exam, technicians separated each nail with fine tools, searching for foreign cells. Under the middle right fingernail, traces of dark pink tissue, possibly human skin. Whitfield noted. Foreign tissue sample retained for DNA comparison. The girl had fought back. Henson exhaled, a heaviness settling in his chest. The examination concluded at 11. Whitfield removed her gloves, looked up. Preliminary summary. Victim died by asphyxiation, time of death 4 to 6 days prior. Wrist ligature marks, bruising to neck and elbow, signs of resistance. No post-mortem violation detected. Male DNA samples collected from blouse, collar, and under fingernails. Foreign polyester fiber found, likely from old truck seat. She signed the report, sending a copy to the lead investigator. Henson took the document packet, flipping through pages, pausing at the close-up photo of the polyester fiber. It was tiny, seemingly insignificant, but to him, it was a starting point. In many cases, a single fiber had led the entire investigation to the killer. He closed the file, murmuring, he could be local, someone who knows the area, the trails, the deep water spots to hide a body. As he left the exam room, faint morning sunlight filtered through the frosted glass, casting broken beams across the lab floor. On the table, labeled vials were sealed and sent to Kent County's DNA lab for further analysis. Henson paused at the door, glancing back through the glass. Rachel's body was recovered, looking strangely peaceful after the dark nights he and the team had endured. The preliminary report was sent to the precinct that afternoon. Cause of death: mechanical asphyxia. Time of death: 4 to 6 days prior to discovery. Restraint marks consistent with duct tape. Foreign male DNA sample collected. Synthetic fiber recovered. Polyester truck seat type, 1990s manufacture. Further analysis pending. Under notes, Henson added in handwriting, possible local perpetrator. Likely owns or operates light truck or similar vehicle. Outside, the rumble of a delivery truck echoed past the morgue window. Henson looked up, watching the sound fade toward Reed's Lake. In his mind, details began aligning. Abandoned bike, silver paint flecks, polyester fiber, large boot prints, duct tape ligatures, all loose pieces waiting to form the shape of someone. A person living right in this small town, quiet, ordinary, but harboring a darkness no one had ever noticed. He pocketed his notebook and stepped into the hallway. The exam room door clicked shut behind him coldly, marking the morning when Rachel Porter's missing person case officially became Kent County's first homicide of the year. In his mind, details from that morning's forensics report replayed. Gray polyester fiber, silver paint flecks, work boot prints, duct tape, and especially his own handwritten conclusion. Perpetrator, likely local, owns transport vehicle. He hung his coat on the rack, poured a cup of coffee, then flipped on the desk lamp. The Grand Rapids map was thick with red pins. Henson used a ruler to circle a 5-mile radius around Reed's Lake, where Rachel was last seen. Within that, hundreds of registered trucks, but he knew to start with familiar faces, people who might have crossed paths with her. The next morning, Henson and two young detectives combed resident records and DMV lists. After 2 hours, they flagged 5 names: a delivery driver, 2 Lakeview Diner regulars, Rachel's old neighbor, and a young auto mechanic named Michael Laird. All 5 owned or used light-colored trucks. Henson tapped his pen on the desk, eyes lingering on the last name. He'd heard it before. One of the diner witnesses mentioned it. Henson and his partner hit Lakeview Diner at noon. The air was the usual mix of frying oil and strong coffee, manager Lynn recalled. Rachel knew lots of customers, but closest to the AC repair guys or delivery folks. She chatted with that mechanic from the nearby shop. Think his name was Laird, Henson noted. Michael Laird, Grant Auto Service. Lynn added. He sat at the counter, talked cars. Once Rachel said he was kinda weird, kept asking when her shift ended. That afternoon, Henson and his partner arrived at the shop. A faded Grant Auto Service sign hung crookedly, the lot full of broken-down cars and oil stains. Michael Laird emerged from under a vehicle, hands greasy, eyeing them warily. He was 24, tall and skinny, short black hair, rumpled gray jacket. Henson introduced himself, flashing his badge. We need to ask about Rachel Porter. The name made Laird's face twitch. I knew her, he replied quickly. She worked at the diner. I went a couple times. She's missing. Right? Henson stared directly. Did you see her the night of the 13th? No. I was home, watching baseball. Who can confirm that? Nobody. I live alone. He pressed his lips, wiped his hands on a rag, avoiding their gaze. While Henson questioned, his partner quietly scanned a silver truck parked against the wall, right side paint chipped, caked with dry dirt. That your truck? Yeah. Haul parts with it. Old, 94 model. Henson noted it, eyes locked on the vehicle. Leaving the shop, he told his partner to collect paint chips from Laird's truck for comparison. Can't test without a warrant, the other said. I know, Henson replied, but check if the color and texture match the scene sample. Preliminary results later showed similar tone, but not conclusive. Meanwhile, the other 4 suspects were cleared. The delivery driver had solid proof delivering in Kalamazoo that night, with signed receipts. The 2 diner regulars were at company parties confirmed by employee roster. Rachel's old widowed neighbor just chuckled sadly. I don't go out at night, can't even see the streetlights. Only Laird remained. Everything circled him. Silver truck, local address, victim contact, no alibi witness, but no matching DNA, no eyewitnesses, no direct traces linking him to the scene. Kent County Lab reported, male DNA on victim's blouse doesn't match any current database samples. Henson sat alone in the office until late, rereading all reports. Laird appeared 4 times across documents, but still just a hazy name. He underlined in his notebook, no solid evidence, yet. Outside, rain pattered the window. He recalled Laird's eyes at the shop, not quite fear, but an evasive something hard to pin down. The next day, Henson tried again. He visited Laird's home late afternoon, asking casual questions. A neighbor said, he keeps to himself, no friends. That night I saw his truck in the driveway till late, still there morning, but who knows if he left. I turn in early. Henson thanked him and left, heart heavy. In the internal report to superiors, he wrote, 5 suspects narrowed, 4 alibi confirmed. Michael Laird, 24, single auto mechanic, owned silver truck, prior victim contact, no alibi witnesses, no DNA match, recommend, continued surveillance. At the end, he added a neat handwritten line, slanted right. Laird, suspicious, but evidence lacking. That night, as Henson locked up and left the precinct, streetlights flickered pale yellow, illuminating rain streaks on his car. He gazed toward Reed's Lake, where wind rippled the water with chill. Something told him he'd brushed close to the man behind the young woman's death. But he also knew, in investigations, belief without proof was no better than the foggy void he stared into out there. That night, Henson drove home as the clock neared midnight. Rain fell in a drizzle, streetlights reflecting on the streaked windshield like blurred memories. In his head, his own words from the report hours earlier echoed. Laird's, suspicious, but evidence lacked. That conclusion gnawed at him. He knew his gut was right, but gut wasn't enough for an arrest warrant. The law demanded proof, and he had none. No witnesses, no murder weapon, no matching DNA, no verified vehicle. The next morning, back at the office, the stack of files on his desk seemed taller than yesterday. On top, an internal memo from command. Progress on Rachel Porter case. Below it, Three bold question marks. Henson opened the wall map, staring at the red pins marking Reed's Lake, Grant Auto Shop, Rogue River Banks, places he'd scoured for 2 weeks. No new leads. The lab sent a supplement, DNA from victim's blouse, degraded, insufficient for full STR profile. Match results, inconclusive. He read it 3 times, then slammed the printout down. All hope that the DNA would finger the killer evaporated. The investigative team shrank as other cases piled up. Morning briefings grew short and silent. No progress, no new leads, no additional witnesses. 3 phrases Henson knew by heart. Each time his own voice seemed to fade. Police checked dozens of local trucks, but none matched the scene. Tire treads perfect. Silver paint from the tree couldn't ID a specific make. Experts only vagued. Possibly Chevy or Ford, 1990-1995 models. Possibly the word Henson hated most. The press turned cold. At first, Rachel Porter was headline news. 19-year-old missing, body found near Rogue River. Mystery bike by lake. But with no updates, stories shortened, bumped by weather and sports. By week 3, a local paper ran a stark headline, 19-year-old murder case goes quiet. Below, a photo of Henson at the tape line, face blurred in blue-red lights. He tossed the paper on the desk, skipping the rest. Pressure from the department mounted. Superiors demanded weekly progress reports. City council grilled budget detail. Some colleagues whispered Henson was stuck on a dead-end case. He heard but didn't respond. Each morning, he arrived early, rereading reports, reviewing scene photos, noting overlooked detail. But the more he read, the bigger the gaps loomed. No foreign fingerprints, no direct witnesses, no cameras, no confirmed vehicle. Just a chain of unproven theories. End of the month, he revisited forensics. Dr. Whitfield shook her head slightly. I re-extracted the DNA, but water damage ruined it. Can't recover. We have nothing to match. Henson nodded faintly, thanked her, and walked out. In the hall, he eyed the sealed evidence boxes, soil bits, fabric fibers, paint flecks, things that once made him think justice was days away. Now they were just silent objects, waiting for dust. Early November, the department held a brief press conference. Henson, in his old suit, stood by a large poster of Rachel's photo. A reporter asked, "Do you think this case will be solved soon?" He replied evenly, steadying his voice, "We're still working at all leads pursued." But as flashes popped, he knew his answer would headline truncated. Police have no clear suspect. That night, Henson sat alone in the office, desk lamp casting shadows on the yellowed map. He grabbed a red pen, circling Grant Auto Shop, Laird's workplace, then scrawled below, "Still possible. Needs follow-up." But deep down, he knew there was no follow left. Laird gave nothing more. His lawyer demanded no contact without a warrant. His truck was inspected. No scene-matching traces. A perfect suspect to doubt, but too clean to charge. Winter came early. Reed's Lake iced thinly, cold wind carrying damp earth smells. Passing by, Henson always stared into that dark water, feeling something unsaid buried deep under the ice. The Rachel Porter case began sinking like that water, quiet, cold, motionless. December, the official precinct memo was signed, case status inactive, pending new evidence. File 001372, stamped red, slid into the third metal drawer home to unsolved cases. Henson held the folder cover a long moment before filing it, the metal click like a period. He sat at his desk, adding the final line to his personal case notebook. No witnesses, no weapon, no ID'd DNA, no new leads. Surveillance suspended. Then he closed it, leaning back. Overhead fluorescence lit his tired face. Outside the window, first snowflakes fell blanketing the road and Reed's trail sign. The Rachel Porter case officially went quiet. Snow continued to fall heavily throughout that night, blanketing the entire area around Reed's Lake and the road leading to the Kent County Sheriff's Office. In the small second-floor room, Detective Mark Henson still sat alone at his desk as the clock neared 3 in the morning. The Rachel Porter case file lay open in front of him, the last page still bearing his handwritten note. Clearly, no witnesses, no identified DNA, no new leads. Investigation suspended. Out in the hallway, the heater hummed, mingled with the wind whistling through the door crack. He knew this was the last time he would touch that file as the lead investigator. 3 days later, the official document was issued. The Rachel Porter case was classified as injected pending new evidence. All evidence was transferred to the Kent County Evidence Vault, the specialized storage facility in the sheriff's office basement. Henson personally carried the sample box down there. Inside were sealed plastic bags, a segment of dried grass, a silver paint smear, a polyester fiber, several soil samples from the scene, and especially two small vials containing DNA samples collected from the victim's jacket. The vault supervisor, an elderly forensics technician named Murphy, checked the list and noted each code number. "I'll put it in section A7, cooler at 14 degrees Celsius," he said, labeling as he read each symbol aloud for Henson to verify. Everything was stored carefully, each envelope sealed. But when noting the final code, Murphy frowned. "This one's odd." He pointed to the second DNA vial, labeled 001372B, but the list showed 0000. Henson furrowed his brow slightly, then said, "Fix it on the list. Note duplicate to avoid confusion." Murphy nodded, jotting it in the margin of the log. Neither realized that tiny discrepancy would leave that DNA sample dormant in the shadows for nearly 2 more decades, overlooked in every subsequent review. Time passed. In March of the following year, Henson officially submitted his early retirement request. 25 years on the force left him not just with medals, but with unsolved cases without answers weighing on his shoulders. He cleared his desk, glanced back at the file cabinet, third drawer, middle row, where the file coded 001372 was stored, the only case he had never been able to close. Before locking the door, he took out the photo of Rachel from that year's news bulletin, slipped it into his notebook and quietly left the room. Outside, the snow had melted, leaving only cold puddles reflecting yellow lamplight. In the years that followed, the Rachel Porter file remained untouched in the evidence vault, alongside thousands of other cases filed under cold case. No one reopened it. No one mentioned it. Only Rachel's family sent a letter to the Kent County Sheriff's Office each year, asking if there was anything new. "We just want to know, do they still remember my daughter?" Mrs. Porter wrote in a 2008 letter. The letter was stamped "Received," clipped to the file, but never answered. Sometimes, a young officer assigned to inventory the vault would walk past the long rows of metal shelves, reading the faded labels. They would see code 001372, do a quick check, then note, "No updates." Everything was closed up and returned. The smell of cold metal, sealed plastic, and time mingled in the cramped space, where hundreds of cases slumbered under dim white lights. The press, after many years, had nearly forgotten the name Rachel Porter. Only occasionally, when another disappearance occurred in the area, a local paper would mention the unsolved case from 2000, with a faded old photo. In the comments, a few locals wrote, "I remember that girl. My house is near Reed's Lake." Then no one replied. As for Henson, after retiring, he moved to the northern suburbs. He got a dog, planted a few flower beds, tried to forget his investigating years. But sometimes, on sleepless nights, he would open the drawer, pull out the old notebook, read a few faded lines. Layered, suspicious, but no evidence. Each time, he felt a small sound inside him. Not the wind or the clock, but like the snap of an uncut thread between him and that forgotten case. By 2015, the archives switched systems, and all files were re-entered into new software. The staff, while scanning data, noticed code 001372 had one duplicate sample vial, DNA not sequenced. But since the file was marked inactivated, protocol didn't require retesting, so it was flagged checked. The small error from years ago still lay there, sleeping in the deep cold of the evidence vault. Time kept passing. In Grand Rapids, those who once knew Rachel gradually moved away or forgot her name. The Lakeview Diner changed owners, and the missing girl photo once posted at the counter was taken down, replaced by a new coffee ad poster. Only Reed's Lake, freezing each winter, retained its familiar stillness, as if it had never witnessed any tragedy. In October 2019, exactly 19 years since the night Rachel vanished, her mother sent another letter to the sheriff's office. The handwriting trembled more than before. "Please tell me, does anyone still remember my daughter's case?" The letter was stamped "Received," then lay in the incoming mail bin among dozens of new reports. No one replied. But that letter, unbeknownst to anyone, was flagged for transfer to the cold case unit, the division that would be re-established a few months later. A tiny speck of dust began to stir in the silence of 2 decades. In the evidence vault, the temperature stayed at 14 degrees Celsius, fluorescent lights casting down on shelves reaching the ceiling. On shelf A7, fourth row, a gray plastic box, labeled Case 001372, Porter, Rachel sat quietly. Inside, among the aged evidence bags, the small mislabeled vial remained intact, the handwritten B blurred by time. No one saw it. No one knew that inside that vial, a faint DNA fragment still existed, and it was the key to the truth that would be awakened 20 years later. On shelf A7 of the evidence vault, the small mislabeled vial lay dormant for 20 years, until a spring morning in 2020 when new fluorescent lights were installed, and the first hand in nearly 2 decades touched that box. A technician was performing routine inventory per directive from the Kent County Sheriff's Office, preparing for the birth of the cold case unit, the division just re-established after years of budget cuts. They needed to review unsolved cases, files never closed but long forgotten, and in that list, among thousands of cases, was a name familiar to many who once lived in Grand Rapids: Rachel Porter. 2000. Unsolved. On April 6, 2020, Detective Amanda Brooks, 37 years old, was officially appointed to lead the cold case unit. A graduate of the Michigan State Forensics Academy, with service in Detroit's major crimes unit, Brooks was renowned for crime scene reconstruction and applying next-generation DNA technology. When she picked up the nearly 2-inch thick file, the faded ink, reading 01372, Porter, Rachel, she clearly felt one thing: something in here was still alive. She opened the first page, black and white photo of Rachel, Henson's initial report, scene diagram, old forensics results. Everything was typed in courier font, like from another era. Brooks read straight through for 3 hours, noting and cross-referencing the state's new database simultaneously. No matching DNA, no prosecuted suspects, case suspended, but one thing caught her eye: duplicate DNA sample, mislabeled, AB. A small administrative error, redlined in the log. Brooks called the evidence vault manager, requesting a full physical recheck of the Porter case evidence. That afternoon, she was escorted to the basement, where the temperature was always 14 degrees Celsius, shelves towering to the ceiling, the smell of iron and cold plastic. The vault supervisor, Mr. Murphy, now nearing retirement, recognized the code immediately when she read it. "Oh, the girl from 2000? I remember. We've kept it here all along." Still intact. He unlocked the cabinet, pulled the gray plastic box. On the lid, the handwritten Porter, Rachel case 001372, was faded but readable. Brooks donned gloves, opened the box. Inside were yellowed sealed bags, grass fragment, fabric, fiber, silver paint chip, and 2 small DNA vials, one labeled 00001372B, in different handwriting. Ink blur. She checked the attached log. Just as in the file, only code A had been partially sequenced in 2001. Results failed due to sample degradation. B had never been processed. Why wasn't both tested, she asked. Murphy just shrugged. Back then, costs were high. Lots of other cases, they just picked the primary sample. And this one, I think it was just a labeling mix-up. Brooks examined vial B, under the light. The solution inside was still clear, not clotted. After 20 years, recovery was still possible. "Can you authorize me to borrow this sample to send to the new DNA lab? You fill out the request, I'll sign it right away," Murphy said, a bit pleased to see an old case get attention again. A few days later, sitting in the small cold case unit office, Brooks wrote the official request to the Kent County Forensic Laboratory, proposing reanalysis of DNA sample 001372B using next-generation sequencing, NG. In the form she noted, reason: original sample mislabeled and never sequenced, potential new source of viable DNA for suspect identification. She knew that one small vial could change everything, or yield nothing. But with her investigative experience, Brooks understood that many cold cases were cracked, not by luck, but by forgotten errors. She reviewed the old scene photos: overturned bicycle, faint blood smear, worker's boot print, gray fabric fiber. Things that haunted Detective Henson 20 years ago now lay before her, but in her hands was what Henson hadn't had: next-gen DNA tech that could extract trace evidence from aged samples. That evening, with the office lights off, Brooks sat alone. Outside, April wind blew through flowering trees, shedding petals. She opened her computer, entered case code 001372, Porter, Rachel, into the newly implemented cold case tracker system. The word "status reopened" appeared on screen, shifting from gray to light blue. A small click, but it marked the awakening of a case dormant for 20 years. 3 weeks later, Sample B was shipped to Othram Inc.'s DNA lab in The Woodlands, Texas. Pioneers in forensic genetic genealogy, FGG, specializing in degraded DNA for cold cases. In the accompanying document, Brooks added a short note, possible linkage to fiber evidence suggesting truck seat origin. Request full sequencing in comparison to national database. As the transport vehicle left Kent County, Brooks stood by the second-floor window, watching it go. Late afternoon light cast a faint orange glow on her face. She knew results would take at least 6 weeks, but her instinct told her this time would be different. On her desk, she placed the old photo of Rachel that Henson had kept in the file. The girl in the photo smiled gently, eyes bright, holding a coffee mug at the diner. The photo, once printed in the paper, missing since October 13th, Brooks said softly, almost whispering to herself. This time, we won't let you be forgot. In the basement, as staff closed the evidence vault cabinet, shelf A7 had one empty slot. Just one small detail, overlooked 20 years ago, had now become the start of a new journey, a journey that, months later, would change the entire Kent County docket and put Rachel Porter's name back on the front page of every local paper. The vehicle carrying the small DNA vial left Kent County in the April dusk, traveling miles of highway, crossing state lines to the chilly receiving dock of Othram Inc., a forensics lab deep in the Woodlands, Texas industrial area. Inside, rows of DNA preservation freezers gleamed under white lights on spotless steel. Every vial arriving here carried an unfinished story, and vial 0. When the receiving technician opened the box, he read the old label aloud, Kent County Sheriff's Office, Evidence Vault, Porter, Rachel, 2000. Scribbled in blue ink below, mislabeled sample, for reanalysis. The vial was logged, sealed into a dedicated 20°C freezer, awaiting processing. In the receiving log, lead technician Evelyn Carter added, degraded sample. Proceed with ultra-low input protocol. 2 days later, the lab officially began DNA recovery. Under the microscope, Carter examined the tiny tissue particles left in the solution. 20 years in cold storage, hope it's still there, she murmured, like a prayer. Using ultra-low DNA quantification, she determined usable DNA at only about 30 picograms, less than 10 times the minimum for standard testing. Still, with Othram's new tech, even those bits could tell their story. Carter started extracting trace DNA, using special enzymes to repair broken gene strands. Each step was monitored on screens, degradation level, purity, base structure. Over 36 hours, the sample went through PCR machines and ion separation, finally yielding a positive result, quality sufficient for full SNP, single nucleotide polymorphism sequencing. When the graph band appeared on screen, Carter smiled faintly. We got it. From millions of data points, the lab built a complete genetic map, creating the first suspect gene profile in the Rachel Porter case. Results were stored by code, not name, per protocol, sample ID TX20-184, origin, Kent County MI, subject, unknown male DNA, year. After internal validation, the data was encrypted and uploaded to 2 open genetic databases for criminal investigations, GADmatch and Family Tree DNA. These platforms allow suspect profiles to match against millions of Americans who voluntarily uploaded their DNA for ancestry purposes. Hundreds of cold cases in the past decade were solved this way, and now Rachel Porter's name joined the queue. The GADmatch system ran for hours, algorithms comparing millions of SNPs for genetic similarities. Carter sat in the control room, watching the progress bar fill. By late afternoon the next day, preliminary results appeared. Partial matches found, 4 sound, closest genetic distance, 1.8% shared DNA. She zoomed in on the highest match, a man surnamed Laird, living in Ohio, uploaded in 2017 for family tree purposes. Carter frowned. The surname Laird wasn't common, but she'd heard it in other cases. It stirred a vague memory. She cross-checked Michigan data, and in minutes, found multiple Laird family members residing in Kent County, within miles of Reed's Lake. The line from Detective Henson's 20-year-old report suddenly stood out as she reread the case summary. Possible local perpetrator. Likely owns or operates light truck. She paused at the last line. Suspect of interest 2000. Michael Laird, 20. In the report sent back to Michigan, Carter detailed each step. Othram Laboratory. Genetic genealogy preliminary findings. DNA sample recovered and successfully sequenced. Viable SNP profile generated using next-gen sequencing. Genealogical database comparison completed. Strong genetic link found to Laird family lineage, Michigan-Ohio branch. She attached a preliminary family tree chart. A network of 4 generations, stemming from a couple in central Michigan, early 20th century, with 2 major branches, one to Ohio, one still in Grand Rapids. In the second branch, 3 men surnamed Laird, matched residency in Kent County from 1990 to 2005. One was Michael Laird, now about 44. When Carter uploaded the preliminary report, she didn't know that in Michigan, Detective Amanda Brooks had stayed up nights waiting for the email reply. The next morning at 7:12 her inbox showed, subject genetic genealogy update, Rachel Porter case. She opened it, reading each word slowly, heart pounding. Family match identified, surname, Laird. Brooks immediately printed the report, spread it on the table. Under the surname Laird, a small note, proximity, Kent County, Michigan, 2000. Recommendation. Further genealogical triangulation required. She looked at Rachel's old photo on the wall, said softly, 20 years, and now you're finally starting to tell us. That afternoon, Brooks met with superiors in the cold case unit office. She presented the full process summary, from discovering the mislabeled vial, to DNA recovery, and Laird's surname ID. Officers in the room sat silent, only the projector humming. On screen, the family tree appeared. A tangle of over 30 names, but at center, 2 bold branches, Laird, Ohio, and Laird, Michigan. Someone pointed, Michigan branch, right? Brooks nodded, yes. And at least one on this list lived just 2 miles from the scene. The superior looked at her. How likely is this coincidence? Brooks replied firmly, not very. Probability under 0.02%. I think we have a lead. As the meeting ended, and everyone left, Brooks stayed, staring at the board. In the dim fluorescent light, Laird stood bold in black ink at the paper's center. She took a red pen, circled it, a neat decisive loop. Somewhere out there, a man surnamed Laird was living normally, unaware that the blood in his veins had just spoken after 20 years of silence. Brooks turned off the lights, leaving only hallway glow, reflecting on the whiteboard. She closed the door, and in the darkness behind, Laird remained clear, like ink that would never fade in the Rachel Porter case file. The report from Othram Laboratory arrived at Kent County 3 weeks after the DNA sample was successfully recovered. The first line on the page left Detective Amanda Brooks speechless for a few seconds. Genealogy results. Laird surname, residing in Kent County, Michigan. She printed out the family tree map, with spiderweb thin lines stretching across 4 generations, narrowing down 3 men with a Laird surname who had the closest genetic relation to the DNA sample found on Rachel Porter's clothing. 2 currently lived out of state, one in Ohio, one in Indiana, and only one remained in Grand Rapids. That name stopped Brooks cold. Michael Laird, 44 years old, former auto mechanic, and notably, once on the initial suspect list for the... She reopened the old file from Henson, the long-retired investigator. On the last page of that year's report, there was a scribbled note, in blue ink. Laird, suspicious, but no evidence. Everything felt like a strange loop of time. Brooks sighed, writing in her notebook, 20 years, and every trail leads back to the same name. The next morning, she presented the report to Lieutenant Harris. Same surname, same area, previously interviewed. He might have been here all along. Harris studied the family tree map, pensive. If it's him, we can't screw up again. Start surveillance, but keep it discreet. Don't let him know we're back. Brooks immediately launched the surveillance plan. Public records showed Michael Laird living alone in a small house south of Grand Rapids, near Highway 30. He worked as a mechanic at Tanner's Auto Repair, just over 2 miles from Reed's Lake, a chilling match with the route where Rachel disappeared. In the first week, Brooks and colleague Nick Jordan tailed him from a distance. They logged details: leaves home at 7 a.m., returns at 5 p.m., stops at a small bar in the industrial area. His vehicle, a 1995 silver-gray Ford F-150, was still in good shape. Scratched taillights, with silver paint flaking off in patches. Brooks snapped photos, sent them to the tech lab. The comparison results showed the paint layer likely matched the structure of the silver paint chip collected from the tooth. Eerily similar, Jordan said. viewing the images. Brooks whispered back, "No more coincidences." In her internal report, she noted, potential suspect, Michael Laird, behavioral indicators, isolated lifestyle, stable routine, low social contact, need direct DNA sample for confirmation. That day, as dusk fell, Brooks parked across from the repair shop. Laird stepped out, paper coffee cup in hand, lighting a cigarette. Under the neon lights, smoke swirled around his face, angular, calm, inscrutable. Brooks took a few more photos, then wrote in her notebook, "Now we just need biological evidence." She knew everything was now converging, and just one more step, the truth of 2 decades, would be confirmed. As the surveillance plan entered its 3rd week, Detective Amanda Brooks knew she couldn't wait any longer. The genealogy report had pointed to Laird, but for prosecution, she needed actual DNA evidence, irrefutable proof. An expanded surveillance warrant was signed, allowing legal collection of discarded items from the suspect's household trash. On Tuesday evening, Grand Rapids drizzle fell lightly. Brooks and Jordan waited in their car as Laird dragged his trash bin to the curb. He tossed in a black trash bag containing beer cans and a paper coffee cup. As he walked out of sight, Brooks hurried over, slipped on rubber gloves, and popped the bin lid. She pulled out the bag, sealed it, heart pounding. "Hurry," Jordan urged. "Trash truck's coming." The sample went straight to Kent County Forensics. 2 technicians separated items: cigarette butts, can lids, coffee stirrers. They carefully swabbed DNA with sterile cotton. 2 days later, preliminary results confirmed the DNA on the items belonged to the same person, male, genetic profile matching the Laird lineage. Brooks sent the sample to Uthram Lab in Texas for official comparison with the DNA on Rachel Porter's shirt. 5 days later, while writing her report, an email from Uthram popped up. "Comparison complete. Probability of identical origin, 99.98%. Brooks read the number over and over, a mix of relief and chills washing over her. 20 years, all to reach 4 words. Match confirmed. She printed the report, clipped it to the file, and marched to Harris's office. "I've got it," she said, placing the papers on his desk. Harris skimmed it, a faint smile. "So we finally nailed him." He signed the search and arrest warrant, voice stern. "Follow procedure to the letter. Brooks, no mistakes to ruin this one." Back in her office, she assembled a small tactical team. Laird's house map spread across the table, front door, garage, escape routes, truck parked by the wall. "He usually gets home at 9 p.m., Brooks said. "No recorded weapons. We move quiet, seize all evidence." As night fell, the task force vehicles rolled down quiet streets. Brooks sat in the back, blue and red lights flashing across her face. In her hand was Rachel Porter's photo, the young girl's smile glowing through the plastic sleeve. Brooks gripped it tight, whispering, "We're bringing you home, Rachel." Over the radio, Harris's steady voice, "Operation Reed's Lake, approved." As the lead car killed its lights and stopped in front of the small Oak Ridge Roadhouse, Brooks took a deep breath, hand on the door handle. After 20 years, tonight she would face the man who haunted the city. The search and arrest warrants were approved. Action imminent. The wooden door burst open in one ram. "Gann County Police! We have a search warrant!" Brooks's voice echoed through the night. Flashlights swept the small living room, illuminating peeling walls and oil-dusted floors. Michael Laird froze in the hallway, beer can still in hand. His eyes widened. No time to react. 2 officers, swiftly subdued, and cuffed him as Brooks quickly read the arrest warrant. "Michael Laird, you're under arrest for suspicion of murdering Rachel Porter." He didn't resist, just scanned the house like seeking an escape that no longer existed. As police let him out, Brooks turned to the forensics team. "Start checking the entire house and garage. Focus on old items, the truck and storage area." Laird's small house reeked of damp and motor oil. On the kitchen table, old newspapers, toolboxes, beer cans. But in the living room, something caught Brooks's eye, an old tin box on the shelf, lightly dusted. She gloved up, opened it. Inside, amid coins and rusty keys, was a small silver necklace with a heart pendant, engraved RP. Nearly faded. Brooks held her breath. It was the jewelry Rachel wore in her last photo at Lakeview Diner. She held it up to the flashlight, cold metal gleaming faintly in her hand. "Tag evidence, N1. Victim's necklace." Continuing the search, forensics moved to the garage. Heavy motor oil stench, walls hung with mechanic tools, scratches and dried oil coating the floor. In the left corner, the silver-gray Ford F-150 sat quietly, paint peeling, dust thick. Brooks approached, scrutinizing the truck bed. Dark mud streaks along both sides. "Sample this," she ordered. The technician knelt, scraping mud into a vial with a small knife. "Compare to Reed's Lake soil sample," Brooks added. On the wooden workbench beside the truck, a roll of silver-gray duct tape lay amid glue tubes and screwdrivers. The edge was dry but sticky. The technician carefully peeled a sample, sealed it. "Same type as the tape found on the victim's wrists," Brooks confirmed. She opened the truck door, shone the light inside. The driver's seat was covered in light silver-gray polyester fabric, slightly torn at the bottom corner. She glove-touched it, feeling the shiny, thick fibers. "Cut a 5 by 5 centimeter seat sample," she said. "Send for comparison with fibers found on Rachel's shirt." The evidence list quickly grew. Silver necklace engraved RP, roll of silver-gray duct tape, mud sample from truck undercarriage, truck seat fiber sample, fingerprint and hair samples from driver's seat. Inside, the team collected an old rag with dark mud stains and a 201 newspaper headlined, "Mysterious Disappearance of 19-year-old Girl by Reed's Lake." Under the headline, a penciled scrawl, "They'll never find me." Brooks stared at the words, chill. Once everything was sealed, she stepped outside. Laird was loaded into the patrol car, sitting silently, eyes sunken, face weary and blank. Brooks paused a second, looking at him through the foggy glass. 20 years, Michael," she whispered, and finally, "you can't hide from your own shadow." The patrol car rolled away, taking him with it. Inside the house, forensics lights still glowed, reflecting off the lined-up evidence bags. Brooks breathed deep, then closed her note. Tonight, the truth had taken solid form. The next morning, the Kent County Police Department's interrogation room was bathed in cold white light. Michael Laird sat at the metal table, wrists cuffed, head bowed low. Detective Amanda Brooks entered, setting a cup of coffee down in front of him. "Let's begin," she said, her voice even. "Everything is being recorded on video and audio. You have the right to remain silent, the right to an attorney." He didn't respond. He just stared at the blank wall. Brooks sat down across from him, opened the file, and methodically placed each evidence bag on the table. A silver necklace engraved RP, a roll of duct tape, a photo of the truck, a mud sample, and finally the DNA report, with the 99.98% match. Each item hitting the table was a cold thud. "We found all of this in your house, Michael. Your DNA matches almost perfectly with the sample on Rachel Porter's shirt," Brooks said, her eyes never leaving him. Laird shifted slightly, lifting his head. His eyes were cloudy, but for a moment, fear flashed through. "No way," he muttered. I just gave her a ride." Brooks leaned in. "What did you say?" "I saw her pushing her bike flat tire. I just wanted to help, but she got scared, screamed. I lost my temper." She opened the photo of Rachel's body and placed it in front of him. She was strangled, hands bound with duct tape. "You call that helping?" He trembled slightly, trying to steady his voice. "I didn't mean to kill her, I just wanted her quiet." "And then what did you do?" He fell silent, breathing hard. "I panicked. I thought she was dead. I took the body to the lake. I didn't know what else to do." Brooks leaned back, scrutinizing his expression. Sweat beaded at his temples, hands shaking, voice breaking. She jotted briefly in her notebook. Laird admits presence in moving the body. Denies intent to kill. Psychological stress. Avoids eye contact. As she stood, he looked up, voice hoarse. "You'll tell them I didn't mean to, right?" Brooks paused, eyes cold. "I'll tell them exactly what you said. But justice doesn't care about intent, Michael. Only consequences." She closed the file and walked out, leaving him alone under the pale white lights. In her mind, the puzzle pelinks were starting to fit, but there was still a gap, the time he couldn't or wouldn't account for. And Brooks knew that to understand the full story, she'd have to get him to reveal the rest. The small interrogation room grew stifling as the clock ticked into the 8th hour. Michael Laird had been silent for hours, his face gaunt, hands clasped tightly across his chest. Detective Amanda Brooks still sat across from him, patient but unwavering in her gaze. "You said you took her to the lake," she reminded him, her voice light but clear. "But the Rogue River scene has no mud traces matching your truck's undercarriage." "What does that mean, Michael?" Laird swallowed hard, eyes darting. "I'm not sure," he stammered. Brooks said nothing, just slid the photo of the rusted lighter recovered from the truck toward him. We found this in your vehicle. Same type as the 2000 model. Engraved MLL. You said she was at the river, but it seems the story doesn't add up. A long silence stretched. He stared at the table, lips quivering slightly. I didn't think you'd go this far, he said quietly, then gave a weak chuckle. I buried her, at first. Not at the river. At the lot north of Reed's Lake, where the old construction site used to be. Brooks leaned forward, voice maintaining its calm rhythm. Can you be more specific? He took a deep breath. There's a broken fence, next to a big oak tree. I dug there. Not deep. I thought no one would find it. What happened after that? I panicked. The next morning, I went back. I pulled her up, put her in the truck, and drove to the Rogue River. I just wanted to hide it. I thought if the water carried her away, no one would ever know. The final words broke out like a confession. Brooks opened the satellite map and pushed it toward him. Mark it. He took the trembling pen and circled a small area. Right here, he said. I still remember, because I dropped the lighter there. Brooks held his gaze for a moment, then nodded slowly. If you cooperate, that'll be noted. I just want peace. 20 years. I haven't slept, he said softly, voice weary. When the statement transcript was printed, he read it carefully and signed, Michael Laird, confirming the initial location of Rachel Porter's body. The pen shook, signature scrawled, but Brooks left the room, taking the file to Lieutenant Harris's office. He pointed out the first burial site, she reported, about 3 miles from Reed's Lake, next to the abandoned construction lot. Harris nodded, eyes lighting up. After years on this case. Good. Send the forensics team there immediately. If he's telling the truth, we'll close the story right where it began. That night, the vacant lot was temporarily cordoned off. In the dim flashlight beams, the big oak stood stark, amid the cold grassland, wind whispering through the broken fence. Brooks looked around, sensing that just a few feet of soil beneath her might hold the answers to 20 years of waiting. She said quietly to her team, Tomorrow morning we excavate. The Kent County forensics team arrived early, stringing yellow tape around the lot, Laird had indicated in his statement. Detective Brooks stood by the oak tree, map in hand, eyes tracking each marker being staked. Lieutenant Harris signaled, start at the spot he circled on the map. Go easy. The first shovel cut sank into the damp soil. The metallic clink against gravel echoed softly in the silence, clear enough to hear the wind. After about an hour, a forensics technician called out, something different from the soil, darker color, softer. Brooks approached, kneeling. Just as in the statement, the soil in this area showed signs of disturbance, uneven sediment layers. Keep digging, carefully, she said. The team used trowels and brushes, sifting soil layer by layer. Then a hard white object emerged, the first bone fragment. No one spoke. They continued, uncovering more bone fragments, along with faded jeans fabric. Mark the coordinates. Full panorama shots, Brooks ordered. Voice Lou. A technician lifted a small fabric piece, the edge still bearing a button engraved with the Lakeview Diner logo. She recognized it immediately. Rachel's uniform. Nearly 3 hours later, they found the skull portion, alongside the Zippo lighter, engraved ML, rusted but with clear markings. Brooks stared at it, a chill running down her spine. This is the first place, she said quietly. All evidence was photographed and bagged. The team collected soil samples, noting wind direction and soil moisture to compare with the mud on Laird's truck. A technician said, soil here matches mineral content with Reed's Lake sample. Confirms he drove out from this area. The remains were nearly complete, laid out on a white stretcher. An old nylon cord wrapped around the neck bones, clear evidence of strangulation. As the final evidence bag sealed, Brooks stood silently watching. 20 years, and finally Rachel Porter had been found where she was left. That afternoon, the Kent County lab completed DNA analysis. The results hit Brooks's email. DNA match, confirmed, 100% probability, remains belong to Rachel Porter. She read it over and over, then leaned back in her chair. 20 years of searching, and every question now had an answer. In the office, Harris read the report saying quietly, evidence complete, no room for doubt. This'll be a model case for the cold case unit. Brooks nodded, eyes still thoughtful. She remembered the photo of Rachel smiling brightly in her diner uniform, clear eyes, unaware that fateful night would end it all. Finally, she said softly. "We've brought her home." At the scene, as the forensics team packed up, afternoon light slanted across the freshly dug earth. Reed's Lake in the distance reflected the day's final gold, silent as it held the memories of the young woman who had passed through here for the last time. The Rachel Porter case, after 2 decades, was officially closed on the investigative front. When DNA results confirmed the body belonged to Rachel Porter, Kent County officially moved to the full case reconstruction phase to prepare for prosecution. In the large third-floor conference room at headquarters, Detective Amanda Brooks stood before the projector screen, flanked by the forensic tech team and 3D simulation specialists. On the wall, a map of Reed's Lake stretched out, with dozens of red dots marking the route, bicycle location, burial site, and body discovery spot. All data gathered over 2 years of reinvestigation was now entered into the forensic 3D reconstruction system, allowing a detailed recreation of every second of the night of October 3rd. "Start from when Rachel left the diner," Brooks said, her voice calm, but her eyes tense. On the screen, the simulation appeared, a young girl biking on the dark lakeside path, her bike light casting a faint golden glow, surrounded only by thick fog. The time displayed in the bottom corner. Across from her, a silver-gray Ford F-150 appeared, moving slowly in the opposite direction. The technician narrated, "Based on headlight angle, vehicle height, and tire track data, we determined Laird stopped the truck 2.7 meters from the victim, enough to block her path." The simulation shifted to close-up. Rachel stopping her bike, the light illuminating her terrified face, Laird stepping out, grabbing her arm, struggling. A sound wave showed a short scream, recreated from a witness statement about hearing brakes screeching, and a yell. Next was the movement rate simulation. After the attack, Brooks said, he used duct tape to bind her hands, dragged her into the truck through the back door. The truck moved along the lakeside route, taking about 8 minutes to reach the north construction site, matching the estimated time of death 10:55 11:15 p.m. The recreated image showed him stopping, opening the bed, dragging the body down. "We confirmed soil disturbance and organic matter traces consistent with that time here," the technician added. On the screen, a heat map simulation of impact force showed Rachel was strangled with a nylon rope, the same type found around the neck bones. The simulation continued. Laird returned to the scene, dug a hole, dragged the body up, loaded it into the truck bed, drove to the Rogue River wooden bridge, and dumped it. The system calculated 3.4 miles. 14 minutes travel time, perfectly matching the statement and flow data when the body was found. Brooks pointed to the screen. Complete event sequence: attack, binding, strangulation, temporary burial, transport, disposal. Beside it, the forensic report displayed decomposition details, average temperature that night, and mud mineral structure all matched. She looked to Lieutenant Harris. "No gaps left. This report will hold up in court." Harris nodded. "Finalize the summary, send it to prosecution, and note the tech used. This will set precedent for other cold cases." That afternoon, Brooks signed off on the forensic reconstruction report, Case N 001372, a document over 180 pages thick. On the cover, the bold conclusion read, "Event sequence established with 99% accuracy probability. Cause of death, asphyxiation by strangulation. Intentional act. Suspect, Michael Laird." As the screen went dark, Brooks stood still. On the wall behind, the 3D image froze at the moment Rachel turned onto the foggy path, the last second before she vanished. She whispered, almost inaudibly, "We've told your story, Rachel. Now it's time for justice to speak." 3 days after the reconstruction report was finalized, the Rachel Porter case file was transferred to the Kent County Prosecutor's Office. In the brightly lit conference room, lead prosecutor David Keller reviewed every piece of evidence, every crime scene photo. "You're saying this is the complete file?" he asked. Brooks nodded, placing the thick binder on the table. "DNA, statements, physical evidence, 3D simulation, all cross-verified. No doubt Michael Laird is the killer." Keller flipped through the pages, his eyes moving slowly over the genetic family tree images, matching mud samples, and 90. He nodded, murmuring, 20 years, and we have it all." He turned to his assistant. "Draft the indictment on 3 main counts: felony murder, kidnapping, and tampering with evidence." Brooks added, "We've prepared the witness list: Othram DNA technician, forensic pathologist, Karen Whitfield, Lieutenant Harris, and the witness who heard the scream that night." Keller jotted notes, then asked, Does Laird have counsel yet? Yes, Alan Pierce. Pearson Grant firm, specializes in criminal defense. He challenged genealogical data in a similar case, Brooks replied. Keller gave a half smile, so he'll try the same trick. But this time, we have a complete chain of evidence. He unrolled the crime scene map across the table, where red dots connected into a route. Diner, Reed's Trail, vacant lot, Rogue River. We'll show the jury this isn't hypothesis. It's the real journey of a murder hidden for 20 years. That afternoon at the Cold Case Unit office, Brooks reviewed the entire file before handover. She reread every form, DNA sample receipt, fabric fiber receipt, evidenced in one receipt, RP silver necklace. Each line closed a piece of the past. Harris walked in, carrying an internal memo. Governor sent commendation. Cold Case Unit gets new budget for unsolved old cases. Brooks nodded slightly, smiling. If Rachel knew this, she'd see she saved more people than we thought. On handover day, the whole team was present. Keller signed the receipt, saying curtly, "From here, the case isn't police business anymore, it's justice's." Brooks shook his hand, replying softly, "And justice, this time, has DNA evidence to stand on." As she left the building, Brooks looked back at the Cold Case Unit sign, reflecting the sunset glow. 20 years ago, a girl was killed and forgotten. Now, with technology, persistence, and faith, the truth had its own voice. On her desk, only one photo of Rachel remained, a gentle smile, bright eyes. She whispered, "Time to bring you to court, Rachel. This time, no one can bury your story anymore." The Rachel Porter file was officially transferred to Kent County Prosecution. The case ready for trial phase. October morning in Grand Rapids, the sky cold and gray, thick fog blanketing the Kent County Courthouse. After over 2 decades, the case Pog, Blanca Laird, officially opened for preliminary hearing, the first step to determine if evidence warranted criminal prosecution. Detective Amanda Brooks stood on the cold stone steps, thick file in hand, gaze steady. Inside, the courtroom packed with reporters, law students, and locals who'd lived 20 years with unanswered questions. Judge Ruth Halverson opened proceedings, voice deep but firm. Today's hearing determines the legality of evidence and basis for charging first-degree murder, kidnapping, and evidence tampering. The room fell silent. Prosecutor David Keller rose, hand on the binder. "Your Honor, we have a seamless chain of evidence based on modern DNA technology, genetic genealogy, physical exhibits, and the defendant's voluntary statement. All data points to one man, Michael Laird." Keller projected on screen images of the silver Ford F-150, duct tape roll, seat fabric, RP necklace, and especially the Othram lab report with 99.98% DNA match. "This isn't just science," he said, "it's proof of truth." Defense attorney Alan Pierce stood, voice firm, eyes cold. "Your Honor, I object to using genealogical evidence. Accessing GED match data without a warrant violates citizens' privacy under the Fourth Amendment. If accepted, it opens the door for authorities to invade the genetic databases of millions of Americans." Murmurs rose. Pierce continued, "This genealogy database was created for personal use, finding relatives, not prosecuting anyone. Using it as a prosecution tool is unethical." Keller countered, calm but sharp, "Your Honor, the data used wasn't the defendant's, but from distant relatives who voluntarily shared with investigators. Moreover, genealogy results only directed the investigation. The incriminating evidence is DNA collected directly from the defendant's household trash, legal, with surveillance warrant, independently verified. This process fully complies with federal law." The judge tilted her head, glancing at Brooks, called to the witness stand. She swore in, then stated briefly, "Genealogy evidence was just the starting point. After collecting direct DNA from the defendant, we confirmed absolute match to scene samples. All procedures done with court approval." Pierce asked, "Detective, do you think one day your own DNA data could be misused?" Brooks looked straight ahead, voice steady. "I think if that data brings justice for a murdered girl, I'm willing." The courtroom hushed. Judge Halverson reviewed the file, minutes passing in silence. Then she looked up, voice clear. "After examining all evidence, the court finds use of genealogical and DNA data in this case legal, reliable, and scientifically sound. Defense objection overruled. Case proceeds to trial." The gavel banged. Prosecution exhaled. Brooks nodded slightly. Laird bowed his head, silent. Outside, fog began lifting, morning light hitting the courthouse facade. Keller glanced at Brooks, whispering, First door opened, she replied, eyes on the gray sky. Now it's time for truth to step into the light. 1 month later, the Kent County courtroom was packed as the official trial began. Televised live across the entire state of Michigan. Outside, residents carried white flowers, candles, and photos of Rachel Porter, the girl who went missing at 19, now a symbol of faith and justice. Prosecutor Keller opened with a firm accusation. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not just a case about a girl who was killed. This is the story of 20 years of silence, of a community that never gave up. And today, the evidence will speak for her. On the screen, he replayed the 3D crime reconstruction, the road around Reed's Lake, the fallen bicycle, tire tracks from the truck, the wasteland, then the Rogue River, where Rachel's journey ended. Keller presented the chain of scientific evidence, testimonies, and DNA samples that matched perfectly. Each piece of evidence, he said, is a voice of the truth. Next, Detective Amanda Brooks was called as a witness. She recounted the investigation journey, from discovering the mislabeled sample tube to obtaining Laird's DNA. When Keller asked, "Do you have any doubts about the accuracy of this technology?" Brooks replied, "No, sir. Science says only one thing: the truth cannot be erased by time." Next was Evelyn Carter, the Othram technician, who described how genetic genealogy technology traced the Laird family through millions of markers. And finally, Dr. Karen Whitfield, the forensic pathologist, confirmed the cause of death: strangulation by strong, intentional force. It could not have been an accident. For the defense, Alan Pierce stepped up, beginning the counterattack. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he said, "Michael Laird is not a cold-blooded killer. He made a mistake. A 24-year-old man, panicked, afraid, tried to hide his error. No motive, no plan, no intent to kill." Pierce repeated details of the confession. He said, "I just wanted her to be quiet. That's the truth." He paced slowly across the courtroom. "Can we sentence a man to death for 1 minute of losing control, when there's no evidence of premeditated intent to kill?" Keller immediately stood up, voice firm. "No one accidentally ties a girl's hands, strangles her to death, buries the body, digs it up, transports it, and dumps it in the river. That's not panic, that's a choice, and that choice took a life." The atmosphere in the courtroom was thick. Rachel's mother sat in the front row, quietly wiping tears. Brooks bowed her head, hands gripping the file tightly. At the end of the session, Judge Halverson handed the files to the jury and declared, "You have the responsibility to determine whether the defendant is guilty of first-degree murder." The 12 stood up and left the courtroom for the deliberation room. Outside, a light rain fell in Grand Rapids. Brooks stood under the courthouse awning, watching raindrops fall on the stone steps. 20 years of investigation, now just waiting for a verdict. Keller stepped beside her. "We did our best, and the rest," Brooks replied softly, "belongs to justice." In the deliberation room, yellow light fell on thick stacks of files. On the table, a photo of Rachel Porter smiled gently at night. The discussion began, and the fate of Michael Laird, along with 20 years of silence, was about to be decided. 12 hours after leaving the deliberation room, the jury returned. The atmosphere in the courtroom was thick, all eyes on them. Michael Laird sat motionless, hands gripping the table edge, eyes sunken deep. Detective Amanda Brooks stood behind Prosecutor Keller, feeling every heartbeat of the room awaiting the verdict. Judge Halverson asked, "Has the jury reached a verdict?" The foreman stood up, voice firm. "Your Honor, we..." He opened the sealed envelope, reading each word clearly. "We, the jury in the case of People v. Michael Laird, find the defendant guilty of first-degree murder, felony murder, guilty of kidnapping, and guilty of tampering with evidence." The room was deathly silent. A choked sob rose from the front row. Rachel's mother hugged her daughter's photo to her chest, tears falling but a faint smile on her lips. Laird bowed his head, shoulders trembling slightly, while Brooks closed her eyes, exhaling as if releasing a 2-decade burden. When the judge asked if he had anything to say before sentencing, Laird rasped, "I didn't mean to kill her. I just lost control. I've paid for it every day." Halverson looked at him long, then spoke evenly, cold but not without emotion. "Michael Laird, the state of Michigan sentences you to life imprisonment without parole for first-degree murder. The sentences for kidnapping and tampering with evidence will run concurrently. Justice may come late, but it still comes." 3 gavel strikes echoed, closing the case that all of Michigan had followed for months. As police escorted Laird away, he turned his head, lips moving, as if to say something, but no one heard. After the trial, Prosecutor Keller gave a brief statement, We don't call this a victory, we call it the answer of truth. Rachel's mother was invited to speak. She said, voice choked but clear, "We don't want anyone to suffer more. We just wanted to know what happened to our daughter. And now, finally, we know." News spread everywhere. Major TV stations broadcast the sentencing live. The next morning's Detroit Free Press headline read, "2 decades of silence end. Justice returns to Reed's Lake." Kent County's cold case unit was cited as a prime example of the power of DNA technology and human perseverance. That afternoon, Brooks returned to the office. She removed her badge and placed it on the desk, sitting and gazing out the window where the sunlight faded. On the desk, the photo of Rachel in her Lakeview Diner uniform remained, the girl's smile looking straight at her. Brooks said softly, "We brought you home, Rachel." The court's verdict not only closed the case, but sparked a wave of reactions across Grand Rapids. Press, media, universities, even religious communities, all mentioned Rachel Porter's as a symbol of hope, that justice can be slow, but never loses its trail. Many brought flowers to the shore of Reed's Lake where she vanished, turning it into a spontaneous memorial. The state of Michigan commended Kent County's cold case unit. A new funding package of over $1 million was approved, equipping the unit with advanced DNA tools. A photo of Brooks and her team standing by Reed's Lake at the award ceremony appeared on the front page of the Grand Rapids Herald. When asked her thoughts, she only said, "Technology lets us see what time hides. But without the community's faith, this case would still be buried." A week later, the Porter family held a memorial by the lake. Hundreds of residents attended, releasing white flowers to float on the water. Cold autumn wind blew through, reflecting flickering candlelight. Rachel's mother spoke, "We hope this place will no longer be a symbol of loss, but of truth." Brooks stood among the crowd, in a dark coat saying nothing, just watching the petals drift into the lake, where the water mirrored the orange-red sky at dusk. At the same time, major newspapers began asking, if DNA technology can bring justice for Rachel Porter, how many other files are still in the shadows? That question stirred public outrage. A campaign called Project Reeds was born, calling for donations to test DNA in hundreds of cold cases statewide. In less than a month, the fund exceeded $300,000. But as the city was still flooded with faith and candlelight, something strange happened. In the cold case unit office mailbox, Brooks received an anonymous envelope. Inside was only a folded sheet of paper scrawled in black ink. He didn't act alone. Someone else was there that night. Below the words was an old map of the forest south of Reed's Lake, an area never noted in the investigation files. Brooks held the paper for a long time, a chill running down her spine. It could be a prank, but her instinct said otherwise. That afternoon, she drove around the lake. Sunset stretched out, the last sunlight dyeing the water red. She stopped by the shore, looking at the memorial candles still flickering, then said to herself softly, "If there's still someone else out there, I'll find them." An imagined camera pans out, Reed's Lake reflecting the fiery sky fading away. Gentle waves ripple, wind blowing through old oak trees. The Rachel Porter case was closed, but its echoes lingered, like the final breath of justice awakened after 2 decades of sleep. The story Michigan 2000 cold case solved, arrest shocks community, shines a direct light on life in America today. In a society based on rule of law, science, and community, justice comes slow but doesn't lose its way if we stay persistent, collaborate, and put truth before ego. The first lesson comes from the detail of the mislabeled DNA tube lying dormant in the evidence vault for 20 years. In work or life, small discipline, labeling, storing, recording, is the difference between deadlock and breakthrough. The second lesson is the power of technology in the right place. Detective Amanda Brooks had no miracle beyond a tight process, leveraging FGG via GED, match family tree DNA, sending samples to Othra, 3D reconstructing the route from Reed's Trail to Rogue River, reminding us that updating skills, even for non-forensics folks, is a citizen's duty in the data age. Third, the privacy security boundary needs dialogue. Like the debate in the preliminary hearing on genetic genealogy, privacy is precious, but transparent mechanisms, voluntary consent, court orders, chain of custody, protect both victims and civil rights. Fourth, community is the key. From the neighbor remembering bike lights, to Project Reed's donations for DNA equipment, to the memorial by Reed's Lake, every small contribution builds shared faith. Final, stay alert to the blind spots of endings. The anonymous letter hinting at an accomplice reminds that justice doesn't end at sentencing. With gender violence, kidnapping, trafficking, we must keep reporting odd signs, preserving digital evidence, respecting Miranda procedures in law contacts, and joining neighborhood safety training. Across vast America, Rachel's lesson is simple and practical: small discipline, right technology, alert community. That's how we keep each other safe. Thank you for following the story of the Rachel Porter case to the end. Proof that justice can come late, but never disappears. Subscribe to the channel to join us in exploring more mysterious American case files, where every small clue can change a whole fate.